Nan,
Hi. Hey. Been
I'm,
a long time.
I know, I'm so pleased that you're joining us today.
Yeah, me too.
It's
I'm
really,
honored to be invited.
it's great to see you, and it's such a privilege for all of us.
Thank you. I
Where are
wanted
you?
it to be the art school so I could actually have some kind of discussion with the students
Yeah.
after
Where are you calling from today?
New York City.
Yeah. And
The
you're doing well?
epicenter,
You're okay?
fucking epicenter of it all. Wow. I'm good. It's the rest of the world. It's not
Yeah.
anymore.
So as you know, I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and you could answer them as you wish or not. So should we begin?
Yeah, I heard you were asking people their most vivid memory from childhood.
Oh my
And I
God.
always said I don't remember anything, and then suddenly all these memories have been flooding back. And now I could talk for hours about my childhood.
Okay, well,
Crazy.
you are right. You definitely have uh, someone who's providing you good information. So I'm going to ask it. What is your most vivid memory from childhood?
Okay, so I grew up during the Cuban Missile Crisis. So my most vivid memory is going down to my father, this four of us, and saying, "War for sure," every morning, because I lived in terror of the atom bomb.
Mm.
And my father had just discovered the black hole. So he spoke openly about the black hole. And most kids have some kind of, religious or spiritual guidance. And my father was a confirmed atheist. So he shared with me that. Also, I remembered that my sister and I ran away to the circus, but we didn't get there. But we were running along the beach in North Carolina. Unfortunately, we got picked up, but that's a real vivid memory of mine. The most
That's,
vivid memory that I always talk about is when I was 5. I remember what I was wearing, and I was wearing like a cowboy outfit, probably like this, actually. And I was standing in front of my house, and I thought, anything my brothers can do, I can do. And so that was the beginning of my feminism.
who were your early influences when you were coming of age as an artist?
Um, uh, I've had so many early influences along the way. I would say I came of age so many different times, I'd say. So maybe my first memory is of Kandinsky. My parents were liberal Jews, so they had posters, Chagall and Kandinsky. And I started painting when I was about 10. And the first thing I painted, of course, was the apocalypse, but in kind of Kandinsky colors. And I remember that I was really impressed by To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee. And I used to round up my friends to perform it in my backyard. And I was the director and the star. I played Scout. I was a really bossy director.
That is
So,
amazing.
yeah. But then, I went on so I'd say that as I was coming up, my earliest influence at about 13 was a magazine called East Village Other.
Mm.
From that came Interview. So I had like the first issue of Interview. And my aspiration was to be they had something called Slum Goddesses every week. And so that became my aspiration. And to run away to the studio was my other aspiration. Warhol studio, all those girls I loved. It wasn't so much about Warhol as a painter, it was Warhol as a filmmaker and the whole scene around the studio. And Scum Manifesto had a big effect on me. Valerie Solanas' book about men walking through a river of snot to get to pussy. So that had a big influence on me.
Do you feel that in what way do you feel your artwork is autobiographical? Or how do you address
Well,
that question?
that's all it ever was.
Yeah.
But I think all art all good art, well, all art is autobiographical because it's coming from the person who's making it. So whether it's abstract expressionism, minimalism, film, photography, photography like mine, abstract photography, any of it is some sense the story of someone's life. So in that way, I think it's autobiographical. Mine was distinctly so because I was trying to take pictures in order to remember. But in fact, I think I don't remember much, and it might be because I took pictures.
Right.
As the memory became the photograph instead of the free float of memory. Now my work, I think, is about states of mind, which is extremely autobiographical. The newest work is about the darkness of addiction and the euphoria of drugs. Those are my two new pieces. So what could be more autobiographical than that?
What is it about photography that draws you in so much? Why did you fall in love with the medium?
I don't know if I ever did. I always wanted to be a filmmaker.
Ah.
I always said I disliked photography as a medium. I thought it was the easiest thing to do. I had more respect for painting and film. But then recently, I started to understand photography as and respected enormously as an amazing medium. For me, it was a way to connect to people. It gave me permission to look at people. And for that, I loved it. And I hadn't taken a picture in, I don't know, I hadn't picked up my camera in a long time, years, except to photograph the sky. All my work has been about going into my archive and making videos and slideshows based on archival work. But since quarantine, I started taking pictures. I picked up the camera again.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself a storyteller?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
What is the least favorite part of the artistic process for you? The part that you like least?
Calling it process.
Say it again?
Calling it process.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I like that word intensely.
Okay. What is the least, just a,
Process is about, you know, theorizing and thinking about, you know, constructing the work before and analyzing it in a way that is not, to me, really about the making of art.
mm-hmm.
It's one step removed. And so it's not the terms I like to think in.
Is there part of making photographs or that you like the best in terms of either making pictures or the editing part afterwards or the printing?
My life's work is about editing. You know, anybody who took as many pictures as I have over the years would, you know, have good work at some point. So it's all about the editing process. And I love to collaborate. And at this point, I really can't make work without collaboration. And I love to make books. These are the things I love.
Do you see any like central themes in your work as you look back retrospectively of all the different bodies of work? Is there something that connects it all together for you?
Yeah, the story of relationships and my search for the meaning of connection between people and the conflict and the love. And like I said, states of mind. And that's, I think, one of the big connecting. And, you know, as I've always said, it's a diary. I started keeping a diary when I was a child. And I wrote a diary every day until, I don't know, 10 years ago. So I have vast quantities of little books full of my writings, but they're really boring. Someone once stole my diaries and said they were the most boring thing they ever read.
Thoughts about how images are now mostly disseminated on screens rather than prints on the wall? So like, meaning like social media or Instagram or or computer screens?
I have a lot of thoughts. I mean, the first time I saw Instagram was only a few years ago. And because I was living a very hermetic life for some years. And I didn't really know about it until like 3 years ago. And the way I showed somebody my paintings, um, and the way they scrolled through it, I had never seen anything like it. And I said, "You didn't see that?" And they said, "Oh yeah, I did. I really did." So there's this banality and superficiality about the way people look at imagery on Instagram. And I just think the screen, I don't like the idea of my slideshows being on the screen.
Yeah.
I think you really need to have the emotional experience. And one of my favorite artists in the world is Roscoe. And I had this epiphany when I stood in front of one of his paintings that I could actually travel into the painting. And that will never happen on the screen. But meanwhile, the rich collectors are getting these virtual reality glasses in the big galleries. Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't. Please tell.
Okay, so they're getting these virtual reality glasses, and then they're having, you know, high quality files of art, and they can put the art into the living room and live with it.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's terrifying to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah, you need, art is real. You need to look at it. You need to touch it physically or emotionally. So I have a lot of problem with it. It's good for disseminating information, but it's how you look at the screen and not forgetting that art is real. And at some point, hopefully we'll be able to see it in real time again.
Who's your imagined audience? Do you think about that?
I used to say it was my friends.
Mm.
In the early years when I did the slideshow at underground clubs, the audience would be made up of just of my friends, and I loved it. And then afterwards, they would tell me which pictures they wanted me to take out. So it was a completely collective experience. Now I'm very much concerned with teenagers and young people who are disenfranchised. And for instance, teenage suicide, and especially of LGBTQI people who are isolated. And I hope that my work can help them find a mirror and feel okay about themselves. So that's an upset, yeah.
Is there a movie that makes you cry?
Oh man. I thought I didn't cry much, but then I was thinking about this, and there's so many movies that have made me cry. Everything from Douglas Sirk to Fassbinder to Visconti. Yesterday I saw Visconti that destroyed me, absolutely destroyed me. But things that have made me cry recently is a film called Crip Camp.
Oh yes, on Netflix.
Have you seen it?
That's very powerful.
Yeah. If people haven't seen it, it's a film about differently, I don't know, handicapped people, their history from the 70s, and then how they came to be activists and actually change the laws of the country. And the early footage is from the 70s, shot on Super 8. And it looks exactly like the hippie free school I went to, exactly. And the kids are wonderful, wonderful. And that made me, I don't know, that tore me up, but in a compassionate way, as opposed to like Fassbinder, who just destroys me.
Yeah. How has success affected your work?
At some points, it's made it harder. I have to think about the way, the kind of vicarious experience people have of the work. And now that it's being shown to a wider audience, I need to think about how the people in the pictures will feel being shown to the world versus in a museum or art gallery. So I've taken out a lot of pictures of people who I love, but I know that they wouldn't like to see themselves. Somebody's making a film about me and my group Pain, so some of the ballad will be in the film, and that's a much wider audience than people knew would ever happen when they allowed themselves to be in my work.
What have you learned through failure?
Uh, I always say that I hate male photographers because in the 70s and 80s, they did everything to stop me.
Ah,
They told me my work was completely worthless. They actually screamed at me in a photo festival, booed me. And this was the early renditions of the ballad. And
yes.
I was just stepped on the whole way up.
Mm.
So you just have to keep making your work no matter what people say. That's what I learned.
So I have one more question, and then we're going to open it up to students.
Okay.
Perhaps it's the most pressing question, and that is, what advice would you give the students in this moment of peril?
On one hand, try to find pleasure. The most important thing is to survive and to make sure the people around you that you love and care about survive. And that requires quite a bit of thought about who's susceptible. Although I think 70% of us have probably been exposed to the virus. It's just the question of who gets sick and how sick. And for me, it's about staying inside in my home with my friends on Zoom, and knowing what's going on outside, but trying. It's devastating. I mean, what can you say? I think artists shouldn't feel a pressure to make work at this point, the students, but I think making work is a survival tactic, and never more than now. But my biggest advice is to become political. That's what's keeping me going. And I think every artist now, their job is to raise money for groups that need it, because people, we're living lives of luxury. Even students, you have a home, you have food, you're safe. And a large portion of the population is not safe. They're in prison, they're on the streets, they're disenfranchised. And the most important thing any artist can do now is put their work out to be sold to raise money.
Great answer, and very meaningful. You ready for some questions?
If you're not too.
Yeah, no, there. So the first one is from Lisa Carezzi, who's on the faculty.
Hey, Lisa. Hi.
Hi, Nan. It's really nice to see you. Thank you so much for doing this. And it's also it's also something I really appreciate that you're here on Mother's Day, because I think a lot of us think of you as sort of a drag mother, either personally or from afar. I don't know if you.
Yeah, big mom here. Big mom. I love that.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh no,
and so,
my internet connection is unstable. 1 second. I don't know what you do when that happens, but hopefully it won't get shut down. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, Lisa. Please continue.
So, and piggybacking on that, I want to thank you for your influence on all of us, but also really in particular on myself. I really owe you a debt of gratitude. I want to say that publicly. So thank you.
Yeah,
so I have a question.
I don't know. You worked with me at some point.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. With hard times. Thank you.
So I have a question that follows up on what you just spoke about. I've always thought of you as a political artist, even if the politics and the activism was subtle in a way. You've always been photographing people as a way to give voice and visibility to queer people and people who are underrepresented. But what you're working on now is an overt act of political resistance and activism. And so, it's less a lifetime of more visual, artistic, subtle statements. And so I'm just wondering, how did this decision to turn it into overt activism come about? And did you realize that making work the way you were making it wasn't enough to achieve what you were trying to achieve with the Sackler fortune situation?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, but I have a little history. I grew up in a communist household. I wasn't exactly a red diaper baby. I was more like a pink diaper baby because it wasn't my parents, it was my aunt and uncle who were labor organizers and actually went to prison. So politics were a really early important influence on me. And since I was 5, I was demonstrating for civil rights with my mother, and then the Vietnam War. And then in the early 80s, someone once said to me, your work is very political. It's about gender politics in a way that at that time other people weren't approaching. And then there was the AIDS crisis, and I made a lot of work around that. So it's not exactly a surprise that I'm making overtly political noise right now. A couple of years ago, I just realized everybody's got to do something right now. That it's an extremely dark time and everyone's got to make noise. And so I have a big mouth, and I started a direct action group to call out the pharmaceutical company, Purdue Pharma, who one family, the Sackler family, who are supposedly big, art beneficiaries. And that's how I knew their name. And then I read a New Yorker piece and found out that they were actually an evil empire. So because of my own addiction to OxyContin, I felt it in my body. And I felt this was the way to start calling out something in the world that I knew. So I started this group, and we've done direct actions in the last 2 years. We actually had the effect of museums and universities refusing the Sackler money and getting their name taken off the Louvre and off Tufts University. Unfortunately, not Yale yet. Yale, and hopefully I hope that there are Yale students who are organized. I've been trying to find them, but I haven't. Right now, I just want to call out the fact that we just started a petition we're involved in bankruptcy court, or rather we're watching it with a hawkeye. The Sacklers have declared bankruptcy in order to avoid all the pending actions that were being taken on them. And so we've had to follow bankruptcy law, which is crazy boring. But my group is starting to do real work in the courts. And I'd like people to look at our new website called Oxy Justice, because it's about anybody who was harmed by OxyContin or other opiates that the Sackler family produced have a moment to file in court as creditors. So it's a very, very important time. And if anyone feels they've been harmed or know people who have been harmed, I ask you to please file claims. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Mickey.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, so I was wondering, how do you know when it's right to respond to something? And I'll preface that by saying there's a lot of work that I'm seeing right now online, and it's in response to Corona. And I'm, I guess, a little guilty of it too, because I dipped my foot in that pile for a bit. But it kind of just, it comes across kind of disingenuous, like maybe it's a thing of kind of relevancy. And then on the same token, I think a lot of times young people might be scared to get involved with something because we don't want it to come across as maybe superficial. So I guess like navigating that line as to like how to be confident when taking, I don't necessarily want to say taking a stance, but getting involved in something that is much kind of bigger than ourselves.
Two things. First of all, how can you not make work that responds to the COVID crisis? It's all consuming. And I think there's a lot of autobiographical diaries, quarantine diaries, and whether they're good or not, they're valid. And I think it's important that people feel that they can make those and not judge the quality of them, just use them as a way to survive. But in terms of getting politically active, I don't think the thing is to stop thinking about yourself and how you'll appear, and think about people dying in prison and ways that you can raise money for bail release. It's a really important time for us to get over ourselves and start thinking about who's really experiencing this crisis. So I don't mean that as a, criticism of you, but it doesn't matter if you feel disingenuous. I feel like a fake lots of times, but you just have to keep doing it.
Bill.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nan, for coming and talking to us today. It really means a lot. Kind of piggybacking off what you just said, like you mentioned that we can sell our work and that's like a good way to fundraise and help some causes, but I'm wondering if you have other thoughts on what photography or art does, during times like this, or this is something I was thinking about even before COVID happened, because, there is always a crisis. We don't always see it, but it's always happening somewhere. And I wonder, like, what does our work really do, or what could it really do, or if you have thoughts on that?
I still say that it's a time to use your work. It's not, causes sounds a little, I don't know, reductive. This is real, that people are suffering like this. And I think this is the most important thing that you can do right now. And I don't know, it's always a question about making work and what does it mean, and what does it mean to put it out, especially at a time when the only way you can put it out is through a screen and social media. But I don't know that you need to question it so much. I think you just need to make it and find it in yourself what you want to make. That's all I can say, really. I don't know if that's satisfying.
Max.
Hi, Nan. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. I just had a question about your book, Eden and After, and kind of what you see in children, and how that's kind of inspired your going back to that work, how it touches you and what it's meant to you now, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, because I think you're the first person who's ever mentioned that book. Seriously, it's like a 400-page book of children, and not exactly cute children. It's actually, a lot of that work's been censored. But it's good that you asked that. I think at the time I was taking those pictures, I felt that children knew the answers, that you come out knowing everything, and then it's a process of being socialized and forgetting everything. And there's a look in the eyes of infants and children, up until socialization, which some of my friends' kids took a while to achieve, fortunately, that you don't see in adults. It's this wisdom and knowledge, and I found that very moving. Thank you for asking.
Yeah,
I'm not doing that work now because there's no kids around.
Yeah.
Fortunately.
Yeah, it feels like special work, and it feels very intimate, and it's wonderful to see. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ron Wei.
Hi, thank you so much, Nan. I'm so excited. I have a question about the projector. I think the projector is an important part of your work sometimes, I mean, or maybe always. So I just want to know now, when we go to the gallery, we will find like there are a lot of multimedia artists or video artists, they try to use a projector. So what's your opinion about the project now? Will you try to do some new works based on the projector?
I gotta say, I love the projector. I used to show the ballad with 9 projectors, and when I have a chance, I still show it that way as an analog show. Although most museums want digital now because they're afraid they won't find the projectors or the projectors will break. So yeah, the projector is like all analog photography. It's something precious. I wouldn't do work about the projector, but I continue to use it in my work. My latest work are video pieces that unfortunately are made digitally, so they're projected digitally. But I'm glad you reminded me about the projector. Thank you.
So we have time for one last question, and it's going to come from Alex.
Who?
Yes, your former, I guess, still assistant and now current student, first year student at Yale. So Alex, you have the last question. As soon as you, it's I think it's under the Jackie's. There you go.
Hi. Hey, Nan.
Hi. Hi. See you again.
What?
Nice
Good
to see you again.
Yeah, we see each other a lot on Zoom now. I guess I'd like to hear you talk more about yourself as a filmmaker, or I think it would be interesting for people to hear you talk more about you seeing yourself as a filmmaker as opposed to a photographer, and how you work with moving image and editing, and yeah.
You could probably talk about it better than I could. Sometimes people know my work better than I do, and Alex is one of them. I always wanted to be a filmmaker since I was 15, and like I said, I never wanted to be a photographer until recently. And I know film very well, and actually in quarantine, I watch about 4 films a day if possible. That's the good part about quarantine. Everyone should watch as many movies as possible because you learn so much from film. Myself, I decided that using the slideshows was a way of making a film from stills. And I shot heavy and accumulated an enormous amount of work and then edited and re-edited it. So that was the good thing about it not being a film, is that I could change it every time. And when I was a kid, one of my earliest memories is that I lay in bed every night under the covers not writing a film script, with a continuing film script in my head for years. And I went back to it every night. Unfortunately, I don't remember it because maybe it would make a great film. But yeah, I think my slideshows are my way of making film.
Yeah.
Well, Nan, we are so thankful and appreciative of you spending part of your Sunday today with us. And it's really great to see you. And I know all the students out there are.
How many people are here?
We have like 155 people. We kept it quiet under your.
I didn't look at anybody. Sorry.
Yeah. Go to gallery view. Do you know how to do that?
I did. I just learned Zoom. Oh my God.
Look at all these.
Hi.
Amazing.
Oh my God, 7 Whoa. Hey, nice to see you.
Yeah.
It's probably better I didn't see you while I was talking. Wow. Everyone say Happy Mother's Day to their mothers or any friends they know who are
Yes.
mothers. It's a good, remember, it's a good day. Thank you so much. Nice to see everyone.
Yeah.
I'm still looking.
Really lovely.